What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a video. It's a clip from a much longer stream that Braxton Hunter and David Wood did. In it, they talk about the Kalam Cosmological Argument and why atheists apparently don't understand it, don't get it, or seem to have a problem with it. I'm not sure, but we're going to watch their video and see what they say about atheists and the Kalam Cosmological Argument. If you guys want to fuck around and find out with me, then please stay tuned.
For a person to object to these, I want to say basically I have to throw out all rational thought, right? If I don't know that whatever begins to exist must have a cause, if I can't say that, I give up. I give up on. If you, Mr. Atheist, are telling me that of everything I've learned, of everything I can figure out and understand about how things work, if I cannot say whatever begins to exist must have a cause, if I can't say that, I'm done. I give up.
Well, I'm glad that David Wood has given up his apologetic career. Good for you. I mean, I think it would be for a stupid reason, but, you know, whatever. I think that when you're talking about your general experience in reality, obviously things that begin to exist have a cause. But I think that the problem that you're going to run into with atheists is when you make the logical leap from, oh, something had a cause, to God is that cause. Also, I don't think that there necessarily needs to be like a direct cause for the universe. Now, as far as a natural explanation for this universe, as far as how it inflated in the first place, the best scientific hypothesis for this is the idea that a quantum scalar field was in a false vacuum state. And then, for whatever reason, it fluctuated from that false vacuum state into a true vacuum state. When that happened, it released an immense amount of energy. Just, you cannot even imagine how immense this energy was. It was so immense that it inflated the entire universe to roughly about, the size that it is now in under 10 to the negative 32 seconds. Near instantaneously. And then, when that happened, it filled that space with inflaton particles. Then these particles transformed from that state into another state that would eventually become matter. That's the scientific hypothesis. And as far as like the quantum scalar fields go, there doesn't necessarily need to be a cause that made something do something on a quantum level. That's been something that's been observed. It doesn't necessarily need a cause for it, so it could truly be an uncaused thing, but still, this is all the nature of reality. This is all contained within the nature of reality, so it would be a natural event. Now, after going through all of that, it's still just, as far as the atheists go, the problem that we have with the Kalam argument and this idea that everything that does exist has a cause is that you say the cause is God.
But I want to say that about kind of all the arguments, right? Like if I can't say that given that level of complexity in biological systems or in DNA, if I can't say that that level of intricate design requires an intelligent source, I give up. You're telling me I just need to give up on trying to reason, because if I can't say that, I can't conclude anything about anything.
See, I just think that's a ridiculous conclusion to come to there, David. Just because something's complex doesn't mean that it needs an intelligence behind it. Something can be complex just naturally. I don't understand why complexity is convincing to anybody. Also, did you notice there how we jumped from, oh, the universe has a cause, to, oh, there's an intelligence behind it? I don't know if he meant to perform that little bait and switch or what, but that is a clear example of this logical leap that I'm talking about. You go from, there has to be a cause for this thing, and therefore that cause has to be intelligent in some kind of fashion. He thinks that only intelligence can create complexity, but we don't have any evidence that says that complex things only come from intelligence.
All right, but where do you want to start here? You want to start with premise one would be an obvious part.
Well, yeah, I think so, and I'd like to comment on what you just said. So, children, I think, pretty early on, come to understand this sort of cause and effect situation in the universe. It's only whenever they get older and get PhDs in philosophy or something, they start thinking something like that things can come to exist, without causes. So my daughter, I ran an experiment when my daughter was about 9 months old, my oldest daughter. I wanted to run an experiment and see if she had developed the dexterity to catch a ball if I tossed her a ball. And so I had this ball and I tossed it to her, and it hit her in the head and she toppled over. Not a good experiment to run on your daughter, not a very Christian experiment. But don't worry, it was a soft ball. I mean, it wasn't a soft ball, but it was a soft ball. And she fell over. But as soon as she fell over, she did something brilliant that told me my daughter's going to grow up to be a philosopher. And that is, she began to look around for what had caused her to fall over. And she saw the ball. But then she did something even more brilliant than that. She looked around for what had caused the ball to fly through the air, causing her to fall over, and she saw me with my hand up like this. And she figured it out. And so she caused something all her own in retaliation, a dirty diaper, which then caused me to call out to her mother to come change the dirty diaper. Now, isn't that an elegant expression of cause and effect? And the point is that 9 months old kids understand that. But when you get to a PhD in philosophy, you start thinking things like maybe things can happen without causes. So,
nice story there, Braxton. Oddly enough, my first question is, why didn't you change the shit diaper? Like, that would have been my first inclination. It's like, scared the shit out of my kid. Maybe I should go clean it up. I don't know. This is just a little bit of a nitpicky thing, I guess. I don't know if you're trying to be funny or what, but I had no problems cleaning shit diapers when my son was young. I feel like this is a pretty good example of how, you can be easily misled by things. Because just because you had your hand up in the air and all of that does not necessarily mean that you were the one to throw the ball. Maybe you had your hand up in the air because you were saying hi to your daughter, and then your wife threw the ball and hit her, pegged her right in the head. That could be a possible situation. But of course, thinking very simply about it, your daughter seeing your hand in the air, she got hit by a ball and everything like that. Generally, for our general experiences in this reality, cause and effect are a very big thing. But this idea that there's only one solution to it, or the first solution that you find is the answer, can very easily mislead you into thinking some wrong things. Like my example of your wife actually being the one that threw the ball and hit her. The only thing that I'm pointing out here is that you can be easily misled by having this preconception that this one particular cause is needed for this thing to happen, when it could be a completely different cause. And I feel like this maps to the discussion being had, because while we agree that there was a cause for the universe, that something caused the universe to inflate, whether that was just no cause or an actual cause at all, there's still something that happened that caused the universe to inflate, right? The only difference is that I don't think that it has to be God. I think that I don't know, right? I have this general sense of I don't know what happened. Here's what the best scientific hypothesis says about it, but ultimately I don't know. You go the extra mile and say it had to be God.
So, or really, I mean, what I really want to say is, this certainly isn't all atheists, but the a lot of the kind that come and post mean comments to us. Really, it's, of course, I take for granted all my life that whatever begins to exist must have a cause. I know that. I've known it since I was, since before I could remember thinking about anything. And of course, the universe began to exist. I took science, I took physics class. I know this stuff. But therefore, the universe must have a cause. Oops, I didn't want to go here. So now all of a sudden I have a problem with whatever, begins to exist must have a cause. Now I have a problem with that. And
I legit don't have any problem with this. I do have a problem with the assumption that everything must have a cause that happens in this reality, because like I said before, if you go to a quantum level, you don't even have to go to a quantum level. You could just go to an atomic level. Because if you think about radioactive decay, there's no perceptible cause for individual atoms in an isotope to degrade. They degrade what seems to be randomly for no cause. Could we figure out a cause later? Sure. But for right now, there's no perceivable cause for that to happen. Now, the decay of an isotope follows statistical laws. But what I'm talking about is the individual atoms within a sample and which one of those degrades. But again, I just want to stress, the only problem that we have is when you make the logical leap to God has to be the one that caused this thing.
So it's not hey, there's an actual problem with the premise. It's a problem with the conclusion. And since I want to avoid the conclusion, I now have to go back and take premises that I would have granted all my life until they were used by a Christian philosopher or a Christian apologist. As soon as a premise starts being used by you guys, I have to suddenly become skeptical about that thing that I would have never been skeptical for 1 second of before.
No, the thing we are skeptical of is that God is the only explanation for that thing to happen. That's it. We don't think that God is the answer for what caused the universe to come into existence. We don't really have a problem with there being a cause for the universe. So I really don't know what the fuck you're talking about, David.
Yeah, I think that was beautiful. And as I always say to my atheist audience, there are some very sensible folks out there. And if the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. If that's not you, I'm not talking to you. So I think one of the challenges that comes pretty regularly to this is they'd say to you, David, hold on a second. What you seem like you're saying, David, is all of my experience bears out that things that the things that happen or begin to exist have causes. But that's just the fallacy of composition. What that means is, the fallacy of composition says, look, dogs are made of atoms. Atoms are invisible to the naked eye. Therefore, dogs are invisible to the naked eye, which, of course, is not a sound argument, right? It is true that atoms are not visible to the naked eye, and it is true that dogs are made of atoms, but that doesn't mean that dogs are invisible to the naked eye. And that's what we call the fallacy of composition, that what's true of the parts of something isn't necessarily true of the whole. So they'd say, yeah, it may be true, David, that everything that happens or begins to exist in the physical universe has some sort of a cause, but that doesn't mean that the universe itself has a cause.
Well, I agree that it does commit that kind of composition fallacy, because just because everything within this universe has a cause does not mean the universe itself necessarily has a cause. That's true. But also, I think that our universe is contained within our reality. And I think that our reality is what, governs everything that happens in reality. That's would be the foundation for everything. And I think that our universe is part of that. So you could definitely have a cause for the universe that is a natural part of this reality. I don't know. I kind of feel like the fundamental misunderstanding here is that our universe and reality are one and the same thing. But considering the fact that there's nothing that precludes from another universe from existing, I think that reality extends far beyond our own universe.
So the response to this would be, okay, fair enough. Still, to put a little gravy on this thing, it is relevant to say that 100% of our experience is that when things start to happen or begin to exist, there are causes, and we have zero counterexamples to this. But that's not actually why we hold this. We don't say everything that we look at seems to have causes, therefore the universe does.
Well, you're wrong about us not having examples of things that don't have causes. We're actually finding in quantum mechanics that things don't necessarily need a cause. But like I pointed out before with radioactive decay, there's no perceivable cause for an individual atom to decay from one element to another. So while at a human scale of things, we always perceive a cause to precede an effect, but we found that doesn't always happen. So just because we're up to date with the current scientific knowledge about our reality shouldn't be a knock against our conclusion that God isn't the only answer.
It's more like this. When we're talking about the universe, let's just cut to the chase with premise one. We're really talking here about the universe ultimately. And when we're talking about the universe coming into being from nothing, there is nothing in nothing that can cause anything. Nothing is no powers, no possibilities, no properties, no potentialities. And so there just simply isn't, you don't have any fertile ground there for anything to happen.
Well, see, that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what nothing actually is. What you're discussing here is this theoretical nothing where just absolutely nothing exists, right? That's what you think nothing is. But in reality, the actual nothing that exists still has a small electrical charge in it, meaning that there's still something there. So a universe could definitely pop out of nothing, at least the nothing that actually exists. So there are various things in this reality that don't necessarily have a cause for it. And this only comes with a fresh understanding of our reality, like an up-to-date understanding of what the scientific evidence points us towards. This is not some kind of like apologetic by atheists in order to get around the idea that the universe has a cause. I think that regardless of whether or not we have causes for radioactive decay or virtual particles, you could still accept that the universe has a cause. It just doesn't mean that God is the only answer for what caused the universe. There could be a perfectly natural cause.
Now, someone might say, oh, well, yeah, but nothing might be able to, we don't know what nothing is like, so maybe nothing can do all kinds of things. But we're not talking about nothing in some, as a label for something out there. We're talking about not anything. And I love when William Lane Craig says it this way. He says, what if someone said, nothing stopped the German advance? You say, oh, thank goodness the nothing was there to stop the German advance. No, come on, man. When I say nothing, I mean not anything.
Well, yes, but your comparison there is kind of shit. Well, William Lane Craig's is. Because when somebody says, oh, nothing stopped the German advance, I mean, that's a totally different context than the nothing when you're talking about the beginning of the universe. Like when we say the universe popped into existence out of nothing. Like, that is a totally different situation than nothing stopping the German advance. That's just a horrible analogy.
So the reason that we hold this premise to be true is that when we're talking about the coming into being or the happening or the beginning to exist of something, yeah, everything in our experience is that way. And the universe has to be that way too, because nothing is not anything. And there are no powers, potentialities, possibilities, nothing to cause anything.
How do you know that? I mean, you have a pretty unreal idea of what nothing is, because the real nothing that exists out there still has that energy potential. So there's still that potentiality in there that you think that doesn't exist. You cannot demonstrate your concept of nothing because it just simply cannot be actualized in reality. The real situation is that nothing, like a space absent of everything, still has an electrical charge, and still it could produce a universe from nothing. Of course, this is all very complex, like theoretical physics and all this other stuff. We don't actually know for 100% certain about these things, but our clearest indications about quantum mechanics, about the beginning of the universe, and everything that we can actually demonstrate leads to this conclusion that the universe inflated from what we would characterize as nothing. It wasn't nothing as you would describe it, but it was nothing, right? A quantum scalar field was in a false vacuum state, and then it fluctuated into a true vacuum state, and in that process releasing an immense amount of energy, inflating our universe in less than 10 to the negative 32 seconds, and filling it with all this energy that then transformed into what would become matter. So I find that to be just fucking amazing. And to distill all of that down to God did it is just, it's ludicrous to me. You know, you're like that. What I described about the quantum scalar field is just, it's beautiful to me. But to just like throw it all away and be like, God did it. Fuck it. God did it. I don't understand this shit, so God did it. Essentially, that's what you're doing in this video. You're saying that it's ridiculous to think that nothing produced the universe. The only difference between my view and your view is that you think a magical wizard snapped his fingers and created it. Well, okay, I'm sorry. That's a little bit degrading. You think a magical wizard spoke an incantation and then the universe poofed into existence. I think that there was a natural explanation for the universe to inflate into existence. That's the big difference in our two viewpoints here. This whole Kalam Cosmological Argument thing always kind of baffles me because people like David and Braxton here like to portray atheists as having a problem with the universe having a cause. While there may or may not have been a cause for this universe, you can readily accept that the universe had a cause that made it inflate. You can accept that and still not accept that God did it. And I mean, I just think that the scientific hypothesis for how the universe inflated is so much more beautiful than just throwing your hands up and saying that God did it. It's so much more beautiful to know how things actually happen and not just label everything as God's doing. Well, heathens, I hope that you enjoyed this video today. If you did, please go down below. Let me know what you think about David and Braxton's comments in this video. Did I miss something? Do you think that they messed up somewhere else and I missed it? Let me know down below. And hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.